Hi there, everybody. Welcome to this edition of On the Sidelines. John Luck with Brad McKinnon. Coming up in this show, we'll preview the football season coming up, as well as a number of sports stories that's happened over the past couple of weeks since we've been on the air last. But we did want to start off with the horribly tragic story involving the Gaudreaus. If you haven't already known, I mean, it's been everywhere. Johnny Gaudreau and Matthew Gaudreau both killed by a drunk driver in New Jersey, I believe. And I mean, I was listening to the story as it unfolded this past Friday, and as the details were continuing to come out, it just got more and more tragic. Johnny Gaudreau, obviously Johnny Hockey with Columbus, formerly Calgary, formerly before that Boston College. He was killed along with his brother by a drunk driver. I think it was the day of his sister's wedding too, which was even worse.
It was the night before, and as you just said, the more you hear about that story, the worse it got. I mean, it's sad, it's tragic. The situation, how it went down with the drunk driver passing a car on the left, and then the other car trying to cover the people on the bike, and he trying to cut him off on the right. It's just horrible. And I mean, you got a bunch of parents without two kids. You got a bunch of kids and a kid on the way without their parents now, and as you said, it's the wedding eve. I feel so bad for the Gaudreau family for all that.
So Johnny was just 31 years old. His brother Matthew was 29. According to an article by the USA Today on August 30th, it said the driver had admitted to drinking 5 to 6 beers before the accident, which, I mean, that's just even worse when you think about everything that unfolded there. But the Blue Jackets and Flames did hold vigils recently, and just to see the scenes outside their respective arenas was just, I mean, obviously a sad situation, but great to see the hockey community coming together and rallying behind the Gaudreau family. And the Blue Jackets actually held a media gathering, and Zach Werenski said, quote, "I just wanted to say thank you, Johnny Gaudreau, for choosing Columbus when other people wouldn't. You brought so much joy and excitement to the city. I've never quite seen anything like it, something only truly special players can do, and that's what you were. Over the past 2 years, I've gotten to know Johnny and his family, and I can just see how much they meant to him. They were his whole world, especially his wife Meredith and his kids Noah and Johnny." And you spoke to it before, the fact that obviously, you know, hockey's one thing, but a family lost two special people.
Oh yeah, 100%. I mean, really, I'm still at a loss for words thinking about it. I mean, my hockey stick's still outside of my drawer with the light on, to be honest with you. And it's horrible, and you don't wish this upon anyone. I mean, drunk driving's never the right route to go. I mean, if you only had 5 to 6 beers, your Uber would have been cheaper than your 5 to 6 beers. And I mean, your life wouldn't be ruined, and we wouldn't be here talking about two lost souls that did not deserve it at all.
And we just wanted to lead off with that because, I mean, obviously a terrible situation, but we wanted to give our thoughts on what is truly a tragic situation. And we are thinking of the Gaudreau family as they continued with the grieving process. We'll be back in just a minute.
You've messed up your son's haircut.
Mom?
Do you A, try to fix it?
Like it never happened.
B, work with what you got? Or C, show solidarity?
Thank you, baby.
As a parent, there are no perfect answers. But you don't have to be perfect to be a perfect parent. Thousands of teens in foster care will love you just the same.
Leading off here on our football preview special, John Locke with Brad McKinnon, and we're going to talk about all things the Patriots, AFC East, the NFL. We'll even give some predictions as well, and some surprising predictions maybe for one of us. But one thing that may have been a surprise to some people was the fact that Jacoby Brissett was named the starting quarterback for the New England Patriots as they get ready for their Week 1 matchup with the Cincinnati Bengals. Gerard Mayo has said throughout all of training camp and the preseason well, it's a quarterback competition. We're giving both quarterbacks a fair shake. But looking back, it looked like that this was Jacoby Brissett's spot to lose.
Oh, 100%. And I mean, we've been talking about this a few different times on the show, and you've always said this is what was going to happen. And I'll give you credit, because there were a few times where I said, hey, I'd rather just see our first-round draft pick go out there and give it its all. But, I mean, just looking at our offensive line, this is the right call. To get the veteran, to teach the new kid a little bit more. And, I mean, hopefully he doesn't get hurt so Brissett can get a few games in there. I mean, hopefully we might be able to see a win in the first few weeks. We'll see what happens there. But I do believe it is the right move now. I didn't at first, but I do believe now it's the right move. Even Tom Brady came out, I think, yesterday or the day before and was like, listen, that's completely the right move. He's going to be able to develop better watching a veteran player play, just like Jimmy Garoppolo did with Tom Brady, et cetera, et cetera.
Maybe learn what not to do, what Jacoby Brissett on the field. But I don't think the Patriots could have gone through with this again, having a rookie quarterback start the season, because obviously the last one to do that was Mac Jones. And I went back to 2021 when Mac Jones beat out Cam Newton for the starting quarterback job. And that was actually preseason. Never mind, I have the stats here.
I was going to say, wasn't that hard to beat Cam Newton?
Right. I was looking at the stats here, but
ankles.
Coming out of that preseason, Mac Jones had passed for 389 yards and a touchdown. Drake May, this preseason, 192 passing yards and a touchdown. But just watching the football game as a whole with Drake May on the field, for him to have any success, it came down to him playing out of the shotgun. And it's one thing to have a few plays on a drive where you're playing out of the shotgun, but you can't go shotgun the entire game.
You got to mix it up. 100% got to mix it up.
And Tommy Curran and Andrew Callahan both gave their thoughts on NBC Sports Boston Early Edition on who should start Week 1, saying that it should be Jacoby Brissett because, well, I mean, the offensive line is a nightmare, as you said. And at this point, if anyone's going to get beaten around at the start of the season, just from a quarterback depth spot, you might as well have it be someone like a Jacoby Brissett who knows that he's only there kind of as filler before Drake May comes in. It's only a question of when he's coming in, not if.
Don't forget about Joe, too. We got Joe down there.
Joe Milton.
Right? He's got an arm on him. I give him credit. That was a smart late pick.
Remember the last quarterback that was a third-string quarterback for the Patriots.
Did we play the Jets early in the year?
Week 3, actually.
That sounds around the time that Drew Bledsoe got knocked out.
There was something else that went in my mind in terms of when should you start your rookie quarterback. And I looked at different quarterbacks that were drafted in the first round, and I have some of them that I'll go over their stats here. But the last one I could think of with a scenario like this, a quarterback that a lot of people don't want to start getting the start for the season, you look at Pittsburgh back in 2022. They had Mitchell Trubisky, who was a starting quarterback, and it took a few games, but he was continuously booed off the field in Pittsburgh. So Kenny Pickett comes in, and sure, he lights it up for a few drives, but eventually Pickett finds his way back to level. And for the Patriots, you can't strike out on 2 rookie quarterbacks in a row. If you do, I think that's a bigger issue, maybe with ownership and which direction Bob Kraft wants to go.
I mean, this year I see another high draft pick coming for us. And hopefully, I'd like to see Drake May get 4 starts at least this year.
I think he'll get more.
At the NFL level, I'm saying at least 4, towards the later end of the season too.
So at the start of the season, the Patriots have nightmare matchups, opening against Cincinnati on the road, home against Seattle. Then you had that Thursday night game against the Jets, a game in San Francisco. But once you get past weeks 8, 9, 10, I think that's when the schedule starts to become a little more favorable. You take on a Jacksonville overseas in London. You take on Tennessee, Chicago, Indianapolis, Arizona. So there are winnable games here. For Gerard Mayo, I think at this point, it's just you have to grin it and bear it to get through the first 5 or 6 games because it's going to be ugly here. And if you can navigate this here and have at least some semblance of a football team by week 6 or week 7, maybe the Patriots can get Drake May in there and give him a true starting point here as opposed to playing out the string after week 14 or 15.
Yeah.
Looking at some of the first-round rookie quarterbacks taken, I went back to 2020 because that was the class that had Joe Burrow, Tua Tagovailoa, Justin Herbert, Jordan Love. In 2021, these were your first-round rookie quarterbacks. Trevor Lawrence did pretty well. Jaguars finished 3-14, but still, Lawrence, it looks like he's a long-term solution. Zach Wilson, drafted by the Jets, a train wreck. Trey Lance, a train wreck. Justin Fields, train wreck. Mac Jones, he went to the Jaguars. Time will tell there.
At least the one thing I'll give Mac Jones, first year we did make it to the playoffs.
Yep, and
we got completely smoked. And
Buffalo didn't have to punt the ball.
Every time that Buffalo got the ball, they ran it right down the field, got touchdowns and field goals, 47-0, whatever it was.
The Bills, they make you want to shout. 2022, the only rookie quarterback taken was Kenny Pickett. Steelers finished that season at 9-8. You go back to last year, Bryce Young, drafted by the Panthers. I think he's still finding his footing. This year is going to be very important to him. C.J. Stroud, the Texans finished the season at least in the playoffs, and then Anthony Richardson was injured for most of the season. But what I'm trying to get at here is that a rookie quarterback isn't a surefire thing. Drake May, I think, has a lot of things working for him, but I think it's going to take a little bit of time for him to get with the NFL model. And it sounds like Alex Van Pelt, the way he's been operating training camp, is he's trying to get the NFL lingo going for Jacoby Brissett. And we'll go ahead through the first few weeks of the season, but you have Drake May listen to the play calls. You have Drake May talk to Jacoby Brissett, figure out how to read the lines, different defensive packages that are coming his way. I think the first few weeks could be important for Drake May on the sidelines, just talking to people.
Oh, 100%. Learning. The more he can learn, the more he can earn. And hopefully he can earn us a Super Bowl ring in a few years,
Let's not get too ahead of ourselves. Let's get back in the playoffs.
Years, all right.
So that was one big story. Another big story in August is the fact that Matthew Judon was traded to the Atlanta Falcons for a third-round pick in the 2025 draft. Again, this was a situation a lot of people could see coming, but when it happened, I was kind of confused that Atlanta gave up a third-round pick. I would have thought they'd try and give up a fifth-round pick or a fourth-round pick because Judon didn't want to be here. The Patriots didn't want Judon here. The Falcons had all the leverage in the world.
Every practice, Judon's wearing a sweatshirt and all that. He didn't do anything to help any of the other players from what we hear. So I loved him. He was a great edge rusher. We've had better, but he was a great one. And just good luck in Atlanta, honestly, because how your attitude was when you were leaving. Imagine him pulling that with Bill Belichick around.
I said this.
He would have been gone for a seventh-round pick.
I said this when Belichick left. Judon, well, I said this actually during the contract dispute, the fact that Judon wouldn't pull this with Bill Belichick. Judon looked and said, oh, cool, there's a new substitute teacher here. I'm going to go ahead and get what I want, and if I don't, I'm going to get out of here anyways. So Sports Illustrated's Burt Breer talked to NBC Sports Boston and said that Judon wasn't as well liked by the Patriots front office as many would have thought, saying, quote, they felt like there was a public-facing Judon and then there was a Judon behind the scenes. And Matthew Judon's a very talented football player, but with every talented football player, there's usually something on the other side 100%. Where people can't see, and I think we were seeing that.
Oh, yeah, there was definitely a lot behind closed doors with Matt Judon. That's without a question. I think most Patriots fan can completely agree with that, too.
One interesting thing to think about, the Falcons' defense this year, that's going to be a talented defense. Grady Jarrett, Matt Judon up front. You have Justin Simmons, Jesse Bates in the secondary. I mean, this defensive unit for Atlanta, I took them in my fantasy football draft. They were like number 30 or 31. And I think that was a steal because with the NFC South the way it is, Matt Judon could help the Falcons really make some noise in the postseason.
I do think Atlanta's going to win that division for sure with all the moves they've made this year. And I mean, it's a weak division in general, but we're Patriots fans. We can't really say anything's weak right now, let's be honest. But
all right, so looking at the Patriots' schedule here, I mentioned the first half of the schedule is basically murderer's row of opposition. You face the Bengals, the Jets at MetLife Stadium on Thursday night. You face the 49ers, the Dolphins, Texans, the list goes on and on. But the Patriots will end the season with a record of blank. 17 games.
3-14. I see your list right there, and we have the same 3 wins, but I'm not going to be as gracious as you are here.
Yeah, if I was Vegas and I bet this and they hit, I'd be a millionaire.
Oh yeah.
So I have the Patriots going 7-10.
Yeah.
So let's let that dissect for a second. The 2024 Patriots going to be 7-10. Now my reasoning. So I mentioned the first half of the schedule is a nightmare. I have them losing against the Bengals, the Jets, the 49ers, the Dolphins, and the Texans, getting a win against the Seahawks, and that would put them at 1-5.
That's my first win is versus Seattle too.
And I've seen this script in the past where it's a nightmare in the first half of the season, but eventually things start to click together, teams start to find themselves. I have them winning games against the Seahawks, as I mentioned, the Jaguars, the Jets here. That's the weekend before Halloween at Gillette Stadium. But then I have them winning games at Tennessee, at Chicago, a game at home against the Colts, and then a game on the road at Arizona. These are winnable games. And when you think about some of these god-awful Patriots teams from the early 90s, even the late 90s, I think times have changed now to where players are playing for future contracts. They're trying to get those contract incentives. So there's something to play for later in the season. But then against teams like Indianapolis or Arizona, they're going to try and compete with you for, I think, a top 5 selection in the draft. So it just comes
100%.
down to almost a war of attrition and figuring out who's going to win that game. To me, I think there's going to be pride kicking in at some point for some of these players. And if you can get Drake May in here for that Jaguars game, and this schedule works out the way I have it working out with a 4-game winning streak, that's going to be crucial for his development going into this offseason.
Oh, big time. 4 in a row, though, for this team. I don't know. The other 2 that I had that you have is Tennessee and Arizona. I do see us winning those. The Colts, that could be a close game. Jacksonville definitely could be a close game. And Chicago is probably the one that will be the closest out of any of those. Especially if they both have their new quarterbacks starting, which I imagine Caleb Williams will probably start right out of the gate over there in Chicago.
I was watching Good Morning Football the morning we're recording this, and they were doing all the season projections. One of the people actually had the Chicago Bears making it to the NFC divisional round.
Huh.
So you think 7-10
That's
crazy?
wild card.
Just look at Kyle Brandt having the Bears go into the divisional round.
I mean, they did get a lot of wide receivers over there now, and what's his name? Caleb Williams definitely has a chance, but I don't see wild card for Chicago.
And there's just a lot of weapons that the quarterbacks can use if they have time. Of course, all this comes down to how the offensive line is going to play. You know David Andrews is going to be solid, but what about the rest of them? And do they give Jacoby Brissett or a Drake May time to get the ball to a KJ Osborne, a Hunter Henry, a Pop Douglas, even a Jalen Polk? To me, Jalen Polk could be an interesting player to watch this year in terms of development. That's the interesting thing with the Patriots fans now. We're not watching to see if a team's going to the Super Bowl or making the playoffs.
Seeing how these draft picks turn out.
Right. We're trying to see what the development of this team is going to be, because going into next year, you know you're going to be looking in the draft for maybe a wide receiver in the first 3 rounds, but definitely an offensive lineman in the first round.
I mean, I'm excited to see how Polk and Baker both do this year. I do think they were good pickups.
All right, so we'll take a quick break here on the show. When we come back, we'll talk about the AFC East. Obviously, a lot of talent there. How many teams will actually make the postseason from the AFC East? And who has the most pressure heading into the 2024 season?
Welcome back to the Cable 8 News. I am John Myers.
And I'm Nick Palmieri.
And Nick, nice to have you here on the set.
It is.
Or is it nice to have me on the set?
He's still got it! Oh my God! Bridgewater right
Second effort, third effort, and fourth effort. This is a community facility. BTV Cable Access is here to present and to represent all the voices in town.
Many members of this corporation who have served voluntarily and spent many hours of their personal time to work toward creating a local network with varied programs to serve the community of Bridgewater.
And 5, 4, 3, 2.
It's about community, it's about coming together, it's about helping us out, because at the end of the day, that's what makes all of us strong.
Back here on the show, this is the football preview special, but we want to give a special shout out to Bridgewater Little League. We mentioned earlier in the summer they won their first state championship. They made it to the New England Regional, unfortunately falling short, but they had a great party at Barrett's, a pizza party, celebrating the season. And, I mean, what a special season for this team that just delivered in the clutch moments.
Oh, yeah, 100%. I mean, I was on my way down from New Hampshire, sitting passenger, watching their last game versus, what was that, Maine?
New Hampshire.
Salem, New Hampshire was the last game, and one play away. They had the baseman on third to tie the game, and I mean, that sixth inning, they were up against the refs. They learned adversity in the fourth when that play, first base guy wasn't safe and the run went in. Those kids learned a lot from that playoff push, and I mean, they made the whole town of Bridgewater proud, for sure.
And it was great to see the community rallying behind the Little League team during the send-off. I had the camera there. But when they came back, they had fun, and I mean, that's what baseball and sports is all about, especially for the youth in Bridgewater.
That's how you change the world, is have the youth. You know, you start there.
So congratulations to Bridgewater Little League for making it as far as they did into the New England Regional. And right now we're going to get back to football, talk about the AFC East, and I'm just going to make it simple. How many teams from the AFC East will make the postseason in 2024?
So I'm gonna be the wild one here. I'll be the wild card here. And I'm gonna say the Bills and Miami both 100% make it in, not wild card. Maybe the Jets. Maybe I'll say 3. I will say 3. I'll say 3.
I picked the Patriots to go 7-10, so there's nothing crazy anymore. I have Miami winning the division.
Yeah.
I have the Jets in the wild card, and I have Buffalo
not making
the playoffs.
So I've heard that from some people. A lot of people that have a high interest in football that I associate with do think Buffalo might not make it because of how bad their defense is turning out to be.
Yeah, Matt Milano suffering a torn bicep, going to miss most of the 2024 season. But you look at the wide receiving core, which was big for Buffalo over the past few years.
No Diggs.
Stephon Diggs getting traded to Houston for a second-round pick. The core looks like this for wide receiver. Curtis Samuel entering his 8th NFL season. Keon Coleman, a rookie. And Khalil Shakir, who has 3 career touchdowns in 2 seasons. Now, obviously, the tight ends are going to do a lot of work, and maybe you can get the running backs involved in the short passing game. But to me, I just feel like Buffalo is starting to spiral, and at some point it's just going to get ugly there.
Hey, listen, Buffalo did have their chances these past few years. And, they're in the division. I shouldn't be saying this, but Bills Mafia do deserve one title. And it's sad that the team went this downhill. And, the whole Diggs and Allen thing, that was a little ridiculous. You know, you should have tried to make both parties happy and all that, but Diggs is definitely a baggage. We can see that wherever he goes.
So is it fair to say they're the team in the division that faces the most pressure to make the playoffs? Because I think you look at Miami, you have Jalen Waddle just signing that extension. We talked about Tyreek Hill. And to me, I think Buffalo right now, if they don't make a deep run into the postseason, I think jobs could be on the line.
Jobs will 100% be on the line there. But I will, as Dom always said, I will be the devil's advocate here. And I do believe it's on Aaron Rodgers. After last year, tearing your Achilles, 3 plays, and you get all that money, you get players to want to come there. And, I mean, they didn't get Devontae Adams over there like they wanted, but I do think there is more pressure individually. There's more pressure on Aaron Rodgers than anyone in our division, in my opinion.
Yeah, I'm going to go with Buffalo. Miami, I think, is still playing with house money for another year or so. They just fired Vic Fangio. They did sign OBJ, who's starting the season on the IR, so he's out for the first 4 games. But I mentioned that Jalen Waddle contract extension. I think Miami could be a dangerous team in the playoffs. We'll get to our predictions in a little bit here. But to me, I think Buffalo, if they don't make the playoffs, then I think jobs are on the line. But more importantly for the New York Jets, I think they still have another couple of years because you mentioned the Aaron Rodgers injury. Realistically, that just set the team back a year. Now he's coming back in. They do have some talent on there. So if they don't make the playoffs, I think that's Robert Saleh perhaps losing his job and maybe not a lot of other people. Whereas Buffalo, I think you're making more wholesale changes. And it sounds like we're between 2 and 3 in terms of which teams will make the playoffs. Where does the AFC East rank in terms of divisions? Because I think they're the number 1 division in football. Obviously, the NFC South is going to be last.
100%.
The AFC
North, maybe.
Yeah,
is
so
up there too.
It sounds like we're in agreement that it's more. The AFC East is a top 2 division.
Yes.
And perhaps makes it a focal point here for the Patriots and what they need to achieve to. Because we had the Patriots going 1-5 against the division, and really that's a measuring stick. If you can't hang with the likes of a Miami or a Buffalo, then you're not doing your job right.
Oh, yeah. No, 100%. And, I mean, the Chiefs division, I wouldn't put that high up there. Oakland's not that good. Vegas now, yeah. I mean, the Chargers, they have a lot to prove, too. So I do think I might put the AFC East as the number 1, honestly. And that's weird for me to say with the Patriots that low on that list because they're coming at 4th 100% no matter what. Unless Aaron Rodgers goes out there and double-check State Farm, breaks his ankle or whatever the hell his sayings are. But
I mean, Aaron Rodgers is just a disaster, but that's another story for another time.
Yeah.
Let's talk about our predictions and who's going to make the Super Bowl, who's going to win the Super Bowl. I'll let you go first on this one.
So I'll do my divisions, my division championship games and the Super Bowl.
All right.
Miami versus Chiefs. Miami wins. That's the East. The West, 49ers. What do I want to put them up against? I didn't even think about the West that much because I got the 49ers in the Super Bowl, and I do have it finally being their time to win a Super Bowl with the talent they have on that team. Because just like the Bills, I feel their window is starting to close too.
And I have Brock Purdy on my fantasy football team, so that would work for me.
Yeah.
So I have, I'm just going to go straight to the Super Bowl here. My matchup, Philadelphia and Miami. And I don't know why I was getting made fun of for this selection. But for the Super Bowl champion, I have the Philadelphia Eagles winning the Super Bowl this year. I mean, Miami, I think, just has a lot of talent. Philadelphia, they had a rough season last year. Jalen Hurts, I think, is going to find himself again this year, and we're going to get back to the Jalen Hurts from 2022 as opposed to the one from 23.
The Eagles at least have the experience, too, of having a long season. They've been to the Super Bowl a couple of times. I know not every team was on Super Bowl 52's winning team, but they've been to the Super Bowl, two times in the last 5 Super Bowls?
Sounds right. Patriots and then the
Chiefs. Yeah. Which is that's experience does mean a lot in football when you're playing extra weeks farther into January and even into February like they have.
Let's not forget about what else Philadelphia has too. That is Saquon Barkley. That could be really interesting. And we'll make our prediction on the Green Bay-Philadelphia game coming up on the Sidelines overtime. And we'll talk about the other sports as well. The Boston Red Sox collapse going right on schedule. The Celtics having some players winning a gold medal, making great pieces on the bench. And we'll talk about the Bruins and Jeremy Swayman. On the Sidelines overtime comes your way right after this.
They gonna remember my name.
I understand. I know it's not your typical resume.
Okay, well.
But candidate. But I've been working double shifts just to pay for books. I've been raising my 2 little brothers. I'm determined, driven, motivated. Isn't that what you're looking for?
Look beyond the resume and discover new ways to develop great talent at gradsoflife.org.
Adventure can be found anywhere, but the best place to start is in the forest.
I spy something beginning with S.
Snow?
No.
Snow-covered trees?
Nothing to do with snow.
Head outside to discover incredible animals and beautiful plants that come together to create an unforgettable adventure.
Wow.
So grab your loved ones.
Don't even.
And explore a world of possibilities.
Come on, this way.
Visit discovertheforest.org to find the closest forest or park to you.
On the Sidelines overtime on your TV, John Locke, Brad McKinnon with you. We talked enough football. Let's talk about the other sports. And the Boston Red Sox, who are coming off a completely hellacious road trip against the Tigers and the Mets. A 1-5 road trip. That's really going to help out your wild card causes. I think I called this back in June, May, April, that this team was going to completely fall flat on its face, and look who's right.
Oh, yeah.
The Boston Red Sox are a disaster, and this collapse happened right on time.
You have the team ahead of you, too, losing 7 in a row, and you go 1-5. Come on. Do you want to make the wild cards, and you just can't win?
Everybody was doing awful in the wild card race. That's what was worse. You look at the Twins, the Royals. I think the Royals lost 7 in a row.
Yeah.
The only team that was doing great in the wild card race was the Detroit Tigers, who just completely curb stomped you this past weekend, winning 2 out of 3. If the Red Sox could have gone, 4-2, maybe be a game and a half out of the wild card, going into a series against Chicago at Fenway Park, I think you're sitting pretty. But right now, after that series against the White Sox coming up this weekend from when we're recording, you face the Orioles, the Yankees, the Rays a few times, the Minnesota Twins. A lot of those teams are in playoff contention. I think it's maybe
all downhill
10 or
from
13 out of the remaining 22 games are against teams that are in a postseason chase.
Yeah, like I just said, it's all downhill from here for the Red Sox. It sadly is.
And
Jared Duran, he keeps doing his thing, but it's all downhill.
And you could see the collapse happen kind of in slow motion. You could start to see the pitching staff get really taxed, and it got to the point where the Red Sox put a lot of their hopes and dreams on a guy who's 44 years old and was coaching his son's Little League team earlier this season, Rich Hill. If you need Rich Hill to be the guy that saves your season, that says a lot more about your team than you think. Then you have Rafael Devers after a loss at Citi Field. I think it was for a half hour, sitting in his locker with a bat in his hand, not answering any questions from the media. This is a team that has checked out. This is a team that has collapsed, choked, and a team that doesn't deserve any fan support. But I know Red Sox fans, we're going to see them back at Fenway Park singing Sweet Caroline and seeing Wally the Green Monster dance around for Mass Mutual.
Supporting that dumb John Henry.
John Henry is another issue for another time.
Yeah.
But realistically, you look at the fact these players gave everything they could. Rafael Devers should not be playing right now. He should be on the IL list because he has injuries to both shoulders. He has a knee injury, and he just should not be out there.
Yeah.
The fact that you have Devers and Yoshida basically platooning the DH spot is ridiculous. This team is terrible against left-handed pitching. We've known that since May. And the fact that your moron owner and the robot of a chief baseball officer doesn't want to do anything just shows everything we need to know about this team. They don't care about this team. They don't care about the fans. We can go ahead and talk about this until we're red in the face. It's not going to make a damn bit of difference. We're only a few baseball decisions away from looking like the Chicago White Sox, who are losing 110 games a season.
What was the over-under? 77 for us?
I think that was the Vegas odds. I think I went as low as like 73.5, and I took the under.
Yeah.
We're not going to hit that, but I came pretty close, I think.
Oh, yeah. No, you did.
This is a team that was up there in the wild card race. I think they were actually holding a wild card spot. And in the span of about a month, when they faced the real teams, the teams that actually knew how to play postseason baseball, they collapsed because they lost the proverbial arms race. And I knew this was going to happen because Alex Cora is a smart guy. Alex Cora can figure out the matchups, the analytics, know what players to put in different positions. Unfortunately, that type of managerial style only works for, maybe 2 or 3 weeks at a time during the season. It doesn't last for 6 months. You want to try and beat a Tampa Bay or a Kansas City. It takes time, it takes care, it takes attention from ownership. And your ownership is absent. That's fine. They don't care about you. I've said it before. If you want to show that you care about this baseball team, the best thing to do is don't go to Fenway Park. Don't cheer this team. Just have this team be an afterthought. Because if the stands are empty, the Red Sox may get embarrassed after a few years. If you have opening day in 2025 look like opening day in 23 when it was cold and snowy and rainy and there were like 2,000 people, if you have that regularly, then you're going to get ownership's attention.
We're Boston fans. I don't see that happening, but that is what needs to happen.
I feel a little better.
They are loyal. Yeah, you feel a little better.
I just unloaded a whole month's worth of anger at the Boston Red Sox. Next up here, the Boston Celtics. And 3 Celtics are gold medalists. Drew Holiday, Derek White, and Jason Tatum, all part of Team USA's men's basketball team that won the gold medal. The dynasty continues, but a lot of people are very unhappy with Steve Kerr for benching Jason Tatum a couple of games and Derek White in the gold medal game. And I think we'll bring this discussion back because we brought it up the last episode, and I said I didn't really have an issue with Jason Tatum sitting for a game. Turns out he sat for both games against Serbia, and Derek White obviously sitting the gold medal game out.
I mean, Derek White in the finals, I don't know why you would sit him the whole game. I really don't. The Serbia, I mean, you want bigger players maybe than JT. Maybe that's why you did it, but I didn't see it. I don't know why he didn't get time. I get Steve Kerr might not be a fan of the Celtics for good reasons, but you don't hold those personal beefs or whatever you want to call them out in the public during the Olympics. I mean, this is the world stage. This isn't just the United States. I know when you win the NBA championship, they say the world champions, but you're not. You're world champions now when you get the gold, 100%, and you had some of, in my opinion, the best players not showing up. Not showing up, not getting the chance to show up.
So I have November 6th circled here. That's when the Boston Celtics are hosting Steve Kerr's Golden State Warriors. That's going to be a fun game.
Are we going?
I don't think so. I don't have that money.
I'll get a lot louder than I do here.
I don't get paid enough money on the sidelines to do that. But that's going to be a fun game. And a lot of people went back to a game at the Garden where the Celtics won by 50 or 60 as maybe the reason Steve Kerr sat Jason Tatum and Derek White at different times.
Embarrassed as a coach.
Right. I don't think that was the case. Right. And I'm not Steve Kerr's biggest fan. But I think Jason Tatum sitting against Serbia, that was more just Serbia is more of an inside the three-point line team. And Jason Tatum, yes, he's a very talented player, but he doesn't play well. Defensively, he doesn't play well, I don't think, inside the three-point line. So if Serbia can switch the matchups like they did during one of the practice games against the U.S., if you get Jokic on Tatum, then that's not a good matchup. Jokic is always going to win that, understanding, this guy is a unicorn of a basketball player, Nikola Jokic. But Jason Tatum, that was more matchup than anything else. Derek White, that one kind of confused me.
That's what I was saying too earlier. We keep going. Sorry to interrupt you, but Derek White really did surprise me. The Jason Tatum, like you just said, it made a little bit of sense,
But Steph Curry, the way he closed out that gold medal game, you could kind of understand why you would go with Steph Curry over a Derek White. And I think this maybe takes me to my bigger point. Jason Tatum, Derek White, Tyrese Halliburton, 3 players that didn't get a lot of minutes. They all averaged under 18 minutes a game. Joel Embiid also averaged 17 minutes a game. But these are all younger players. I don't think you're going to go ahead and see that in the 2028 games in Los Angeles, because LeBron's going to be gone. Steph Curry's probably not going to be playing for Team USA. Kevin Durant's going to be gone. Devin Booker probably gone. Anthony Davis gone. So when you get to LA in 2028, you're going to have Jason Tatum leading Team USA. You're going to have Derek White being a true focal point of Team USA's success. Realistically, I think this was a case of Steve Kerr just trying to give LeBron, KD, Anthony Davis kind of that last ride into the sunset on the Olympic stage. And if that's the case, then I don't really have an issue with it. And realistically, as a basketball fan, the Celtics just played into mid-June. The last thing I need to see is Jason Tatum fatigued by the time you get to November because he's playing in the Olympics. Same thing with Derek White and Drew Holiday. If you sit Jason Tatum for a game or two, same with Derek White, I don't have an issue. Because all you need is them to step on someone's ankle, and you're looking at them being out maybe for the first few games of the regular season.
You never know.
So that's another thing we were talking about. How about the Boston Bruins and Jeremy Swayman still apparently at odds? There has been some reports out there that they're discussing a contract 4 years and about $6 million per.
They're ridiculous. They're ridiculous when I heard that. I mean, Spit and Chicklets came out there, and Paul Whitney saying he has a source who literally said it's 4x6x2 for Jeremy Swayman. You do this after you get rid of Linus Olmark? You don't get ready to prepare at least a $7 million in the 4 years? What are you saying with 4 years? He's top 5, if not top 3 goalie in the league, 100%. And leave it to Sweeney to have a good free agents. Yes, we overpaid a little bit on each player, but that's what you do in free agency, and especially when you do it in the first 5 minutes of free agency. And you have a good draft pick. The last time you had a good draft pick, in my opinion, was probably Pasta. And it was the same pick that we picked up, this Dean, whatever, I don't remember his last name because it's...
Details.
Yeah. I don't remember his last name right now, but it was a good pick. Tall kid, all that. But this Jeremy Swayman thing, it's ridiculous. It really is. You know I'm a big Bruins fan, and it's ludicrous. Yeah, I mean, yeah, you had to deal with Wayne Gretzky, but you have a generation of good hockey players who couldn't win the Stanley Cup, ruining my generation's hockey, in my opinion.
I feel like this could be coming from the Jacobs maybe and what they want to sign on to. Understanding the NHL salary cap is a little more strict than other sports.
It's building up, though, every year.
Right.
It is.
But with a player like a Jeremy Swayman, when you don't have a viable plan B, maybe Brandon Bussey is your plan B, or the guy they got from Ottawa for Linus Ullmark, but when you don't have a truly viable plan B, I don't know what you're planning for.
It's crazy.
I mean, I was listening to Elliot Friedman on the NHL Network before we actually started recording this episode, and he said that usually there's one player on each team that, you know, things will kind of go past Labor Day into the start of training camp.
McAvoy and Pasta both got signed late in in the season. You know, those are big players like you're insisting, but it's a goalie.
But my question is, where could that stack come, or the general contract come from? That 4-year, $6 million contract offer that we were talking about from that podcast, where would that source maybe come from?
The Wang Theater.
Well,
That's it. It's a joke. It is.
Well, could it be coming from Jeremy Swayman? Could he be using the media to help his cause out?
Well, hopefully, because supposedly the Bruins haven't even answered his calls for 3 weeks. Supposedly. Like I said, I'm going off of what I see on my podcast that I watch with hockey, and these guys are usually pretty right. I'll give them that. And
I'll trust you with hockey. I know nothing at all about hockey.
The rumor is, as we said, 4x6x2. Well, 4 years times 6.2, which is ludicrous. It's literally something, like I just said, you think you're at a comedy show when you hear that. But the whole, they haven't talked to him for 3 weeks is, if that's true, get rid of Don Sweeney right now. Cam Neely, you can stick around, but if you're the GM and you're doing that, he is the future of whatever team where he goes.
And think about what this could do to the team if this does truly go into training camp. Brad Marchand kind of gave a little jab. I don't know if it was directly at Swayman, but he said, yeah, I like to keep my contract stuff private.
Yeah.
Could he be trying to jab the team or Swayman into getting this done? And if this does go into training camp, do both sides, Jeremy Swayman and the Bruins, risk this maybe hurting the team going into the 2024-25 season?
It is going to hurt the team. It is. But I don't think – I do think he's going to get a contract lined up. I don't think it's going to be within the next 2 months. The season's going to start. And it's going to be a Pasta or a McAvoy signing during the season, hopefully. And hopefully we don't have to talk about contract extensions for 7 years. When it comes to Jeremy Swayman, I do believe we need to lock him up for 7 years as a Boston Bruin.
Coming from the Bruins side, and I brought this up in the past, is there a red flag knowing that Jeremy Swayman hasn't played a good amount of games in one season? He's obviously platoons the goalie spot with Linus Ullmark, so he would play 45 or 50 games and then the playoffs, but is there legitimate concern for the Bruins signing him to this long-term extension and he could fall flat on his face after 50 games? I mean, we're seeing that with Tanner Houck, different sports, but with Tanner Houck for the Red Sox, he was great the first half of the season, but then, after you get past July, when he reaches his career-high innings limit, he goes past that, he falls apart. Do the Bruins risk maybe the same thing with Jeremy Swayman?
Yeah, I don't know. We're lucky that we went from Tim Thomas to Garas to Jeremy Swayman. I know Linus Ullmark had the start, but I don't see him having more than a bad week, in a row. I don't see him having a whole bad season. I mean, if you still look at the stats in the first 2 rounds, Jeremy Swayman was the best goalie in the playoffs. And I mean, he played the best teams too, besides the Oilers, in my opinion, when it comes to offensive shooters. You went from Toronto with your $48 million 5-player core, and then you went to the Stanley Cup Florida Panthers, who were stacked, and they knew that might be their last hurrah. The Panthers will always make it far for the next few years, but that was their 2023 Boston Bruins year, where you have to win because you can't bring everyone back. And they did lose a lot of pieces in Florida, and I just don't want to see Jeremy Swayman disappear as a Boston Bruin. I do want to see him for at least 7 years. I mean, 8 would be great too, in my opinion.
Let's look at this from another perspective, way to get this done. Could Jeremy Swayman say, I won't sign 4 and 6.25, but I'll sign 2 and 10 per. 2 years, $20 million, 10 years, or $10 million AAV. Could you go short term and basically hold the Bruins' feet to the fire for more money in 2 or 3 years and basically bet on yourself for the next 2 seasons?
So the one rumor I do not believe at all is that he wants 10. I don't see that. I do see him deserving 8 to 8.5, just because I do think Jeremy Swayman's a team player. I mean, just him and Linus, how they got along, they showed how they are both team players. They both said whoever gets a start in the playoffs gets a start, And I just want to see a goddamn contract for this guy. I really do. As a Bruins fan, it does worry you that nothing's done, and you hear all these rumors. This past week is when all these big rumors have been coming out saying, credible source, and now I think even SportsCenter posted something about it earlier today.
Then you have Edmonton signing their own players to 8-year deals.
I did forget to bring that up. I know I had that crazy dream, Leon Draisaitl over here, blah, 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 blah.
You were hoping. It wasn't a dream.
How much money? $14 million he just got paid. That makes it even harder for the Bruins to lock down Jeremy Swayman. It does. It really does. And especially in the fact we know next year Connor McDavid will get paid $16 million. And I'll put money on that he'll get a $16 million a year contract as of next year.
Puts it in perspective when hockey players getting paid $14 million. Jason Tatum just signed for $315 million.
I saw a thing. So Leon Draisaitl, number 1, paid now. When it comes to NBA, his contract, there's like 116 players above that in the basketball league. And the dude that they put with the contract that is the same, I have no idea who he was. He's probably some 5th.
Probably Luke Cornett.
Exactly.
So we'll take a break here. When we come back, we'll make our picks for the first time this season. We'll figure out who's going to win some of the big games, including the Patriots, as they take on the Bengals coming up for their Week 1 matchup.
Maybe you can make retirement happen. After all, you made her college years happen. Opening that education savings account when she was little. Spearheading a campus tour. And another, and another, and another, and another. Bam! Deciphering financial aid. She was like, what? Well, now she's like, you aced planning for college. Now get the tips you need to get on track at aceyourretirement.org.
Back here to wrap things up, and we'll talk about the NFL picks for Week 1. And there's a lot of great games coming up this weekend. First off, Green Bay, Philadelphia playing in Brazil on Friday night, so September 6th. We're recording this on the 5th. The game's going to be long over by the time you see this, but we are recording this on the 5th, so if we're right, we get credit for saying we're right. Philadelphia opening up as 2.5-point favorites for entertainment purposes. Who do you like in that matchup?
Philadelphia, I do. Green Bay Packers are going to be a good team, but they need to figure it out a little bit. Newer quarterback, you don't have Devontae anymore. You don't have all the running backs you've had. I do think Green Bay will be a good team, but Philadelphia, I think should easily win that game.
Yeah, I think Philadelphia is going to win this game. I don't know easily or not, but I think they win by at least 3 points. And the reason is this. I mentioned earlier, Saquon Barkley now plays for the Eagles, so that opens up a new avenue for the Eagles offense to run through. Before it was just Jalen Hurts passing the ball to Devontae Smith, A.J. Brown, Dallas Goedert.
Or running for a 15-yard gain.
Right. I mean, it was almost two-dimensional, but now you go ahead and add that rushing aspect with Hurts and Saquon Barkley. Give me the Eagles in Week 1. The Jets in San Francisco on Monday Night Football. Aaron Rodgers returning to Monday Night Football for the first time since last year when he tore his Achilles. And I think San Francisco is going to win this one. I think they're coming out angrier after what happened in the Super Bowl, losing in overtime. Mm-hmm. And I think the Jets are going to be a good team this year. I just think it's going to take a little bit of time for Rodgers to get acclimated to the Jets offense.
Where is that game?
It is in Santa Clara, California.
Right, so Aaron Rodgers might not tear his Achilles on the most damaging football stadium in the whole league, which I believe is MetLife. If not, it's the Washington one.
That's just damaging stadium in every aspect.
49ers, though, for me, all day, without a question there.
So next up we have Dallas and Cleveland. The Browns opening up as 2.5-point favorites.
You got the Browns as favorites there, huh? That is so far probably the closest game, in my opinion. Might give it to the Browns. Cowboys don't always start off hot. I mean, they did sign their boy, though, with CeeDee Lamb, so there's a little bit of happiness there from the quarterback and wide receiver, but I do think the Browns. I'll take the Browns. And it'll probably be more than 2.5. It will be over a field goal win.
So I'm going to take Cleveland, and simply because Dallas just hired a new defensive coordinator. Dan Quinn got a new job. I think he's the coach of Washington now. So I think there's still going to be some acclimating to get used to for some of the players, including Micah Parsons. So I think it's going to be kind of jumbled defensively for the Cowboys at first, but I think for Tom Brady's first NFL game as a commentator on Fox.
That's his first game commentator?
That is his first game. I think we're probably looking at a game that goes into the mid to upper 30s, unless there's a storm that's going to roll through Cleveland. But if it's good weather, I think you're looking at...
Oh, that should be a very high offensive game.
Maybe if we did over-unders, bet the over. Jacksonville and Miami. The Dolphins coming in as 3.5-point favorites. I'm going to take the Dolphins in this one. I mentioned Jalen Waddle now having something to play for and trying to show that he is worth his contract extension. But Jacksonville, I think they're still trying to get some stuff together. But the Dolphins, I have them in the Super Bowl. To get the Super Bowl, you have to win a bunch of games, and it starts Week 1.
I think the Dolphins win that by over 10.
10?
Yep. I do think the Dolphins are coming out hot this year. I do.
With that price, you can go ahead and buy tickets to that Celtics-Warriors game. And finally, Patriots and Cincinnati. I was looking at a bunch of different odds for this game, and I was going through the schedule. This game has the biggest spread. The Bengals coming in at 8.5-point favorites.
That doesn't surprise me. They have weapons over there. You know, they have an offensive line over there. So obviously I'm going to pick the Bengals. 0-1 Patriots. Not surprised.
I want to say the Patriots will keep it close just because T. Higgins has had his issues in terms of practicing and the contract situation, things like that. But I think it's going to be a rough few weeks for the team from Foxborough. I'm going to take the Bengals, and I think it's probably going to be a double-digit win for Cincinnati.
I can back that. Just like I said, Miami's going to win by 10. Bengals are going to win by over 14. I'm saying over 14.
Patriots have to lose 10 games for my prediction to be right, so let's start at week
off
1.
on a good shot. Yeah.
All right, so that'll do it for this episode of On the Sidelines. We'll be back next week to recap Week 1, look forward to Week 2, and talk about everything else going on in the world of sports. We'll talk to you next week.
And not talk about Jeremy Swayman's contracts.
Or who knows, he could still be a free agent.